Hello students, welcome to another lecture on Understanding Biology chapter 29. In this lecture we are going to learn about plant form. At the end of this lecture you should be able to distinguish between the functions of roots and shoots, describe three types of tissues in vascular plants, explain how dermal tissue provide adaptations for terrestrial lifestyle, compare and contrast different kinds of ground tissue, and distinguish between xylem and phloem. Most plants actually share a unity of structure. This unity is reflected on how plants are constructed, how they grow, manufacture and transport their food, and also how their development is regulated. In this chapter, we will focus on cells, tissues and organs that compose mature plant body. Modern vascular plants indicate many adaptations for a terrestrial existence. Primary vascular plant is built from a root that anchors the plant into the soil, penetrate the soil and absorb water and ions. And the shoot system of vascular plant consists of a stem and leaves, and stem harbor leaves which conduct the photosynthesis, and stems also bear flowers and other reproductive organs, fruits and seeds. The repeating unit of vegetative shoot contain internode, node, leaf and axillary bud, but do not have reproductive structures. Roots, shoots and leaves all contain three basic types of tissue. These are dermal, ground and vascular tissue, and we can distinguish plant cell types found in these different tissues based on the size of their vacuoles. If the cells are living or not at maturity, and by thickness of secretion found in their cellulose cell walls. So these are the three distinguishing characteristics of plant cell types. So size of their vacuole, living or not at maturity, and the thickness of secretion found in their cellulose cell walls. Some cells have only a primary cell wall of cellulose synthesized at the protoplasm, their cell membrane, and some cells have more heavily reinforced cells with multiple layers of cellulose. So you can see that in this one they have only primary cell wall. This one they have actually reinforced cell wall with multiple layers of cellulose. So let's look into three main tissue types found in vascular plant body. So we have dermal tissue, ground tissue and vascular tissue. Dermal tissue is actually on external surfaces and they provide protection, while ground tissue forms several different internal tissue types that can function in photosynthesis, storage and structural support. And lastly, vascular tissue conduct water and nutrition. And these are the different type of cells found in each of these main tissue types. Dermal tissue have guard cells, trichomes and root hairs. Ground tissue, they produce Parenchyma, Collenchyma and Sclerenchyma. And vascular tissue consist of xylem and phloem, and they produce conductive tissues. We are going to go one by one and learn about each main type of tissue that is found on vascular plants. So let's first look into dermal tissue. Dermal tissue forms epidermis, like I mentioned earlier. This tissue is one cell layer thick in most plants. This tissue is derived from embryo or apical meristem. In young exposed parts of the plant, the epidermis is covered with fatty cutin layer, creating a cuticle. Number of different types of specialized cells can be found in epidermis, and these include guard cells, trichomes, and root hairs. Let's first look into guard cells. As we know, guard cells are sausage-shaped pair of cells that flank a stroma, or stomata in plural. Guard cells contain chloroplast. Stomata is involved in passage of oxygen and carbon dioxide and water vapor in plant leaves. And in many plants, stomata are more abundant in the lower epidermis of the leaf. An asymmetrical division of epidermal cell produces the guard cell and the subsidiary cells that help in opening and closing of the stroma. It is important to have a normal pattern of cell division that spatially separates stomata. This is a coordinated network of cell-to-cell communication that form this cell position in their and determine their cell fate in the lower epidermis of the plant leaf. And here is a picture of stomata and the guard cells, as you can see in the lower epidermis, and you can see epidermal cells as well here. Another specialized cell type occur in epidermis are called trichomes. Trichomes are actually cellular or multicellular hair-like outgrowth of epidermis that can frequently find on stems, leaves, and reproductive organs. Functionally, these trichomes keep leaf surface cool and reduce evaporation by covering the stomatal openings. Trichomes actually can also protect leaves from highlight intensities and UV radiation. Some trichomes are granular. They often secrete sticky or toxic substance to deter herbivory. Another type of a specialized cell in epidermis is root hairs. Root hairs are actually tubular extension of individual epidermal cells, and root hairs can be seen in a zone just behind the tip of the young growing root tips. Because root hair is extension of epidermal cells, there is no cell wall separating the root hair from the epidermal cell. Functionally, these root hairs increase the root surface area to improve the absorption. Now we are done talking about the dermal tissue. Let's move on to the ground tissue. I mentioned that the ground tissue actually produces these different types of cells: Parenchyma, Collenchyma, and Sclerenchyma. So the ground tissue actually consists primary thin-walled parenchyma cells that function in storage, photosynthesis, and secretion. Other ground tissue include Collenchyma and Sclerenchyma, which provide protection and support. So let's first look into parenchyma cells. These are the most common type of plant cells. These cells contain large vacuoles and thin walls. They are more or less spherical in shape and contain a living protoplast. These protoplasts can be pushed up against each other and can assume other shapes. They function in storage of food and water, photosynthesis, and secretion. They contain only primary cell walls and less specialized than other cells. They contain functional nuclei and can divide and remain alive after maturity. Next type of cell that in the ground tissue we are going to talk about is Collenchyma. And Collenchyma have living protoplasts. They are longer than wide, and their walls actually have varying thicknesses. These flexible Collenchyma cells provide support for the plant organs and allow them to bend without breaking. If you ever have eaten stem of these I forgot the name of the vegetable, but they have these ridge or lines of these Collenchyma cells that are on the along the stem of the leaf or the petioles that provide support to these vegetative structures. Because they are very flexible, they They allow more flexibility to the plant, and that is Collenchyma. And last cell type we are going to talk about is Sclerenchyma, and they actually have very tough, thick cell walls, and they lack living protoplast at the maturity. They contain secondary cell walls that are impregnated with lignin. These are called lignified cell walls, and Sclerenchyma contain two general types of fibers, and these are called fibers and sclerates. Fibers are long, slender cells that are usually grouped together in strands. On the other hand, sclerates are often branched and very thin, vary in their shape greatly. They're actually in pairs. If you ever ate a pear, this texture, gritty texture of a pear is because of the clustered groups of Sclerenchyma, which is pretty interesting. Now we are done talking about ground tissue. Let's go and talk about vascular tissue. So I told you vascular tissue is actually involved in conducting water and nutrition. So vascular tissue contain two type of conducting tissues: xylem, which conduct water and dissolved minerals, and phloem, which conduct solution of carbohydrates. Phloem also transport hormones, amino acids, and other substances necessary for the plant growth. So let's first look into xylem, which is the principal water conducting tissue in plant. They contain combination of vessels and tracheids. Vessels are continuous tubes formed from dead hollow cylindrical cells arranged end to end like a tube. On the other hand, tracheids are also dead cells that taper at the ends and overlap one another. Primary cells is derived from procambium produced by the apical meristem, while secondary xylem is formed by vascular cambium. Wood actually contain accumulated secondary xylem, and water passed in an unbroken stream through the xylem from the root up to the shoot into the leaves, which is very important for the plants. And this is actually possible because of the evapotranspiration to have water flowing from the root to the tip of the leaves a long distance. This is actually because of the transpiration, which is diffusion of water vapor from the plant. In addition to conducting cells, xylem typically contain like fibers and parenchyma cells, which is also important. Now we are moving into another conductive tissue called phloem, and phloem is the major food conducting tissue in vascular plants, and it is located towards the outer part of the roots and stems. Food conduction in phloem is carried out through two kinds of elongated cells. These are sieve cells and sieve-tube members. In gymnosperms, ferns and horsetails have sieve cells. Most angiosperms have sieve-tube members. Both of these cells contain clusters of pores known as sleeve areas. Because cell wall resemble like sieve, they are called sieve areas. Sieve areas are more abundant in the overlapping ends of the cells and connect the protoplast of adjacent sieve cells and sieve tube members. These sieve areas are also called sieve plates. Both of these cells are living, but they lack a nucleus at maturity. Each sieve tube member is therefore associated with an adjacent specialized parenchyma cell known as companion cell. This companion cell carry out some of the metabolic function for the sieve tube members. So here is a picture of the sleeve plate, companion cell, sieve tube member, cell membrane, plasma desmata, and water and nutrition flow in the phloem. So in summary, root system of plant anchors and absorb water and nutrition, while shoot system carry out photosynthesis and sexual reproduction. Three general type of tissues that are found in these vascular plants are dermal, ground and vascular tissues. Dermal tissue protects the plant from its environment and produces specialized cells such as guard cells, trichomes and root hair. Ground tissue serves several functions including storage, photosynthesis and structural support. Lastly, vascular tissue carry water through xylem and nutrition through phloem. I hope you enjoyed this lecture. Until we meet with another lecture, I hope you have a good day. Thank you.